Is Parkinson's mostly man-made? In the 1970s and 80s, if you served at Camp Lejeune, you drank the water, you showered in it, you cooked with it. You had no idea it was laced with industrial solvents at levels dozens of times higher than what the EPA considers safe. Decades later, many of those same Marines and sailors started developing Parkinson's disease at rates significantly higher than their peers who served elsewhere. I was one of them. I was at Marine Corps Air Station New River, which is aboard Camp Lejeune, during the years in the mid-'80s that the water was contaminated, and I have Parkinson's. Right here on Parkinson's Today, we're asking a hard question. Is Parkinson's mostly man-made? And if it is, what does that mean for prevention, for policy, and for those of us already living with it? Welcome. This is episode 3. We're diving into environmental toxicants, especially trichloroethylene, TCE, I can't pronounce it, and that and many other related chemicals, and the growing body of evidence that much of Parkinson's is preventable. Well, there's the Camp Lejeune story I talked about earlier, right? And in my brief personal context of this, I was there from 1984 and 1985, and it was about 16 months or so. The contamination really wasn't even known of at that point. At least I had never heard of it at any time until probably 2000, 2005, 2010, when it was all over the news about it being in the water there, and there were problems with Marines that had been there. And of course, for me, I was fighting other things and didn't think much of it at the point, just like many people have. You wouldn't think that you got it yourself, but then, of course, later, and now I have a diagnosis of Parkinson's. Now, the science, the contamination, really, the period was roughly from like 1953 to 1987, and with the worst years being 75 to 85. And of course, I was there in 84 and 85. Now, the main culprits, TCE, were at median levels of roughly 70 times the EPA maximum. That's what the levels were at Camp Lejeune. And PCE, again, another word I can't pronounce, from dry cleaning was also in there. There was vinyl chloride, benzene was some of the other aggregates and the inflammations that were in and about all those kinds of different types of culprits that were in and amongst the water at Camp Lejeune. Now, in a landmark 2023, the JAMA neurology study, which is basically about what happened there, compared to 172,000 service members at Camp Lejeune versus 168,000 that were on the opposite side of the continent of the United States on the West Coast at Camp Lejeune, the water there uncontaminated. What they found was Camp Lejeune veterans had a 70% higher risk of Parkinson's. So the odds ratio was like 1.70, so it was much, much higher. Now, the higher rates of early prodromal features such as tremor, anxiety, erectile dysfunction, those kind of things were there. Now, the average time from exposure to diagnosis was like 34 years. For me, it would be like right at about 40 years almost. Later research suggests possible faster progression in those with higher exposures were even occurred, probably showed up. Now, I've seen signs of my Parkinson's for at least 10 years. My wife says at least 20, so that there was indications there, but we just didn't realize it. We didn't put two and two together to make that 4, right? So the VA does recognize Parkinson's as on its list of presumptive conditions, and if you were linked to Camp Lejeune, they don't say anything about it. They automatically say that it came from there. That's good news there on that front. This wasn't a rare industrial accident, though. This was everyday water for tens of thousands of young Marines and their families that were aboard Camp Lejeune, Marine Corps Air Station, New River, and the surrounding areas right there in Jacksonville. Even some of those folks had problems, I think, beyond that. So what are we going to be talking about? What is the bigger picture, the beyond Lejeune thing there? Parkinson's is the world's fastest growing neurodegenerative disease, and global numbers have roughly doubled in recent decades, now approaching like 12 million people. And aging alone does not fully explain the rise, and you've probably heard that in many videos that you've watched. Genetics explain only about 10, maybe 15% of the cases for most people. And the leading environmental suspects, and this is from a drawing from Dr. Ray, Dr. Dorsey, Dr. Michael Oken, and the Parkinson's Plan. So that was Dr. Ray Dorsey. And Dr. Michael Oken. Sorry, I tried to push in Dr. Ray and a Dr. Dorsey to make it sound like there were three. At least that's what I read it as anyway. But they did this Parkinson's Plan and the study on it. Now, what they found was solvents TCE and PCE still contaminate groundwater at many industrial military sites and historically used in degreasing and dry cleaning. That's what it was mostly used for. Now, there's also pesticides and herbicides out there that we need to worry about, especially paraquat. Banned in more than 50 countries, including China and the EU, but still used here in the United States in some places. Studies show significantly elevated risk for those exposed or living near sprayed fields. Other pesticides are also implicated throughout this study. Now, the air pollution, fine particle matter, that's a possibility, linked to higher Parkinson's risk in some people. Now, how it may work, though, is like this. The toxins can enter via the gut, right? Food, I guess you grab food and you take it in. Or you're drinking water constantly. You have this water all over your body. You can take it in through the nose, too. You can breathe it straight in, and then it goes straight to your brain first, right? So, promote the misfolding and spreading of alpha-synuclein, the protein hallmark of Parkinson's, is what they were really getting towards. Bigger numbers and things than I could even imagine, because I'm not a doctor. And early non-motor symptoms like loss of smell, constipation, REM sleep behavior disorder often appear years or decades before and earlier than your diagnosis. And those were in there. I just didn't know that that's what they were focusing on and what they were really looking at. And that was exactly where it would come about, right? Because we didn't have a clue that that was something that was important. I had problems with the sleeping disorder for years and years. My loss of smell, I've been complaining about it for more than a decade, right? And then constipation, I've been told for 20 years, mine was normal when you go 3 to 5 days. And then it got up to 5 to 6 days. And now it's a week, 1 week at a time now sometimes. It is very frustrating when you think something's wrong and you're being told sometimes that that is normal. So what this means? Well, what this means is there is hope to be found. This is not about blame. It's about recognition that many cases are preventable, and maybe you can take steps towards that. There's policy progress. The EPA has moved to ban TCE and PCE in recent years, and advocacy continues for paraquat and stronger groundwater protections for all of us. Now, practical steps of individuals and families can take. This is what you can do. Carbon water filters, right, for your water filtering, every bit of it when it comes through your fridge, for instance, or just out of the tap itself. And some well waters or older municipal systems may be at risk for some of that. Air purifiers in your homes and your offices where air quality is poor, something you can look for. Wash your produce thoroughly. I've seen this many, many places. Consider organic when possible for high pesticide items in store for what you would see there. And support policies that restrict the most toxic chemicals. The country's trying to get on board with that. Exercise remains one of the strongest protective factors we have right now, and I'm trying to get on board with that. And I've got stories just in the last week of how I couldn't and I wouldn't. And my mind says yes, and my body says no, and then my mind says no. So you've probably gone through that same gambit yourself. For those already diagnosed, including the Camp Lejeune veterans and myself, VA benefits pathways do exist. I don't know if I'm ever going to get into the big lump sum because I've heard so many lawyers so far that I've gotten in contact with have so much on their plate they can't take on anymore. So who will do that for me? Or am I able to do that myself? We'll see. So there is a VA benefit for me and a pathway to exist. It's a big, basically all those commercials you saw over the last 5 to 10 years about this was for that big amount of money that the government is going to give for those folks that were at Camp Lejeune and have come down with Parkinson's like myself. I might be too late. I'm not sure how that's even going to work out, and I'll probably have another podcast about that some other time. But tracking symptoms and joining research registries helps advance the science also. And then there's all kinds of different things. There's lots of takeaways from this. Strong evidence links certain industrial chemicals and pesticides to increase Parkinson's risk. Camp Lejeune is the clearest large scale human example so far, but I'm sure there are others. And prevention is possible and urgent. It's something you should try to do in your own home if you can. The resources was the 2023 Goldman JAMA Neurology Camp Lejeune study, right? That was the one there. They talked about Parkinson's and the plan by Ray Dorsey and Michael Oken, the doctors there, for the Parkinson's Foundation is one other place you can find information. And the VA Camp Lejeune pages, you can find that a lot of information there too. But also the Parkinson's Foundations or Michael J. Fox Foundation for Living Well resources is another resource that you can go to. So, knowing the water I drank decades ago likely played a role doesn't change my diagnosis, but it does change how I think about the future. For the next generation of Marines, for farmers, for people living near industrial sites, and for all of us. Parkinson's does not have to keep rising. If this episode resonated, share it, talk about it, ask your representatives about chemical safety. And if you're living with Parkinson's, keep moving, keep connecting, and know you're not alone. This is Parkinson's Today. We'll be back next time with another episode.